Welcome back to the Literally First Class podcast. In today's episode, we're going to answer the question, what the fuck is somatic work? The song that's popping up in my head is from, I think it's not The Sound of Music. Anyway, she's like, let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. You remember that song? That's what I feel like we need to do today. So we need to have real talk. What is somatic work? So 3 years ago, I trademarked a method called the Somatic Success Method. We only have one coach that works for us, by the way. So if you see someone claiming that they are a somatic success coach, they are not. They are not trained through us. They are not trained on my methods. They don't use our archetypes and our frameworks and all of our proprietary information to help assess and work with clients. But first, I want to talk about what somatic work is. And also, I want to talk about what it's not. So you probably have heard of the word somatic, and it's kind of a weird word, to be honest with you. It's not really a sexy word. It's sort of a clunky word. And with, of course, Instagram, Facebook, and other people getting a taste of maybe what they think somatic work is, it's kind of like the game of telephone, where over time and as it's gained popularity and become more mainstream, it's gotten a little bit watered down as far as what it is. Because people still ask me or respond when I say that I'm a trauma trained practitioner that does somatic work with clients. They're like, oh, so you do breath work? And I'm like, no, I don't do breath work. I mean, I enjoy breath work from time to time, but it's actually not what my nervous system prefers. And I don't even use it we don't have it in any of our modules. I've never done breath work with a client in terms of facilitating. In fact, I will use other people's, breath work, like at our retreats and stuff like that, or I'll hire a guide because you're trained on that, right? That's a specific modality. That's a tool. So there's what's called a somatic exercise, and then there's somatic practices, and then there's somatic healing. Let's first talk about the first two. So a somatic exercise might be something like, okay, when you notice looping thoughts and you have trouble sleeping, that's an indication of flight response. I know this as a trauma trained practitioner because you may not be running anywhere, but your thoughts are running. So to me, that is a sign of sympathetic dominance, meaning a charge in the nervous system, fight, flight. Adrenaline is going, right? And it's just really hard to unwind. So we have looping thoughts. I might encourage a somatic exercise, and I tend to call these our somatic strategies inside our academy and the client work that we do, as a containment hold. So it might look like your right hand on your forehead and your left hand on the back of your neck. This does a few things. First of all, it may provide a pattern interrupt, a somatic pattern interrupt, right? So the body is looping thoughts, and now you provide some guardrails. Oh, it's so nice. Also, it provides this memory in the body because when you put your hand on the back of the neck, it can signal to the body that all your physiological needs are met. Why? Because as a baby, you tend to be cradled that way with the nape of the neck. So you can provide this to yourself. And then lastly, where the nervous system feels overwhelmed, on the fritz, or just has a very high level of activation, looping thoughts, we are now providing containment. It's almost like bringing a compression or a hug or a weighted blanket into your body by offering a containment hold. That is just a somatic exercise. That somatic exercise can regulate your body. It can, bring you back down and calm your nervous system. It can provide a need that is beautiful and perfect. Is it rewiring your nervous system? Not necessarily, right? It is a beautiful practice or beautiful exercise as a tool, like in complement to the work of rewiring. Now let's talk about a somatic practice. A somatic practice is something of the body, like yoga. You may have heard of somatic yoga or somatic breath work. Those are inherently somatic. That's like calling an apple gluten-free. An apple already exists as gluten-free, but with marketing trends and buzzwords, when they start labeling stuff that already exists in the world as gluten-free, people are like, oh, and then they're buying it because they're gluten-free, right? So again, different if you have celiac. But my point is, it's inherently somatic because it's already of the body. And soma literally means of the body. So it's like calling something like body. You're talking about an exercise like yoga, like breath work that is inherently somatic. And I also want to share that with the caveat that not all nervous systems like those things. I have had clients at retreats tell me, like we had a sound healer and we did like a share circle after at one of our retreats. And the experiences were all over. Some people were like, I was waiting to feel relaxed and instead I felt activated. I did not enjoy the sound healing. That's because at different frequencies of sound, maybe that's uncomfortable or new to that nervous system, right? Maybe it just wasn't their thing. It's like when you try a fitness class at a gym and you're like, man, I thought I was going to love spin class. And then you get on the bike and you're like, I hate this teacher and this class sucks. I always say try things in threes. Maybe it was the instructor. Maybe it was that particular playlist. Maybe it was the room. Maybe it was something else that were, external stimuli that were influencing that. Or maybe it's just not your fucking thing. And that's okay, right? Permission to not like spin, to not like sound healing. Just because you see it working for one nervous system doesn't mean it's going to work or feel great on your nervous system. Another example would be breath work. So some nervous systems love breath work. It helps them move things because emotions are energy in motion. So maybe it helps you release things. Other people, their nervous system might find this to be too activating. It feels too high. It feels too floaty. It feels ungrounded. It feels like too much to their nervous system. They may not like it. And also, we have to take into account the lived experiences and the traumas that have been experienced in the body. So, for example, if anything has happened in your life that's related to breath or lack thereof, think of strangulation, think of swimming and drowning, like a potential drown accident. You're probably not going to love breath work because your body might get triggered in being reminded of those particular traumas if it hasn't been renegotiated and rewired and healed in the nervous system. So not everyone loves breath work either. And it just depends. Plus there are so many different kinds of breath work. Often, and on the last episode, I'll suggest like the 4-count box breath because it's a simple thing. And if you did a single 4-count like rep and you're like, this isn't for me, cool. But like some of these are 2 hours deep. Like Wim Hof is pretty intense, even though a single round can be, I don't know, 7 minutes or so. It's pretty short. It's really intense for some nervous systems. So there's nothing wrong with you if your nervous system doesn't like those. So those are somatic exercises. And then there's somatic practices that I just talked about. Now let's talk about what is somatic work. So there are actually specific training programs that you need to go through that help you become a trauma-trained practitioner. I am finishing out a 3-year program under Dr. Peter Levine called Somatic Experiencing. This is a very intense training protocol. There's a reason it's 3 years long. And our cohort started at around 90 people and we ended with 15, maybe 20. And that's because people don't realize that in order to hold spaces and do the real somatic work, that you and your nervous system need to be healed enough to do that. That your nervous system actually becomes part of the instrument that you use in coaching and in the therapy modality. So it is considered a holistic therapy. There's no licensure through this. It's a certification. I wish it was licensed because honestly, in my cohort and in many of the cohorts, I'm alongside psychotherapists, psychologists, licensed mental health, workers and professionals that are like, oh, this work is insane. So I remember back in it was our intermediate module, people were just like, why don't they teach us this as a cognitive behavioral therapist? Why don't they show us that we're actually like not healing anybody by just talking about the trauma, that we're not rewiring anything, that we're not actually experiencing any level of transformation for our clients? Like, how come they don't teach this? And I don't know the answer to that. I think that's probably a broader question. But what I can tell you is that it's an eye-opening, it's a mind-blowing experience for a lot of people, including mental health care professionals that go through this to be certified in it. And I would say the thing that it's probably most similar to is maybe NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, or EMDR, if you've ever done that, just like rapid eye movement therapy. It's probably most similar to that, and yet it's still very different. So, what do we do in a somatic session? Again, the first reaction I get is like, "Oh, so you do breath work?" And I'm like, "No, I don't do breath work." They're like, "So what does that mean? Like, what does it mean, like, somatic?" I'm like, "Well, it's when we bring the felt sense experience into our awareness." And what that is really learning how to feel things in our body and start to speak the language of the nervous system. And the way we speak the language of the nervous system, and most people, by the way, say, like in PubMed studies, that they would describe somatic work as learning a different language, which it is. It's the fluency of the body. It's through sensations. So, for example, if I were to ask you, as you think about something that mildly pissed you off or was activating, we use that language where you feel something happen in your body, maybe it was a little bit upsetting or something like that. As you think about that, what do you notice happens inside your body? The first tendency for a lot of clients that come to me that have never done this work, or if you're a more cognitive type, or you come from doing all the things as many of my clients have, you've done cognitive behavioral therapy, you've read the books, you listen to the podcast, you know better, you're aware, you have all of this, information, but you're just not sure how to rewire it. Like, this is honestly the perfect next step for you. This is arguably the key that's probably missing in the bridge between awareness and action to lead you to transformation. So they'll say to me, and they'll look up in the thinking brain with their eyes, literally, they'll look up and say, "Well, I think I feel." And I'm like, no, no, no. I want to see if we can feel, just feel instead of think we feel. Because now we're not conceptualizing the feeling. Stick with me. I know it gets a little bit like maybe a little woo for you, but as you think about that thing of mild charge, mild activation, and you notice something inside your body, what happens from the level of sensation? Let's talk about what that means. Here's a menu that might happen. Well, I feel tightness in my throat. That's the sensation. I feel a contraction in my chest. That's a sensation. I feel my stomach kind of flip-flop and a little nausea. That's a sensation. So you get the idea, right? You might feel a flush of warmth. You might notice red blotchiness. You might start to sweat. You might notice that your eyes are darting all over the place. You might notice your heart beating fast. Those are all sensations. So that's just like a menu of what could be. Now, it doesn't have to be a negative or an unpleasant sensation. It could be, "Oh, I feel this openness in my chest. That's nice. I feel this like warm, cozy feeling." Okay, cool. And so that's the first step. That is the end of the thread that I start to pull on and follow as I track your nervous system and start to ping around to do the rewiring work, which does require a trauma trained professional, somebody who knows how to track a nervous system, somebody who understands what the nervous system is saying when you have no words that you're speaking, because you don't have a conscious connection to this. That's the whole point. And here's why. Because the nervous system has one job, and that job is to protect you. And so what is it always doing? In creation of this, looking for ways to protect you. And so it's constantly scanning, right? This is called our neuroception. It's constantly looking around. Like, even in the room that I'm in right now, there is a glass door. And if I were to see smoke or a fire outside that door, I hope to God I don't need to sit and think to get up and figure out a way to get out of this room. My body just goes into automatic response. Thank goodness. And so that is where our autonomic nervous system, the ANS, comes online and just goes right into a self-protective response, an SPR. And so that's automatic. So there's good news and bad news with that. The good news is your nervous system is doing its job when it's protecting you. The bad news is sometimes it perceives a threat where there is no threat. Let's say someone's trying to love on you and offer support, and it feels maybe dangerous or unknown to your nervous system. Someone's like being really friendly and you're like, what's the catch? Like, why are they being so nice? Or why is this guy so into me? That's where the nervous system starts to maybe perceive a threat where there isn't one. I'm not saying there isn't, it just depends on the situation. And so we need to know our nervous system in order to know, like, oh, like I'm noticing inside my body that my heart beats fast when this person gets close to me, but they're not actually a dangerous person. They're not actually trying to hurt me. I'm just uncomfortable with intimacy, for example. So that's where the body and the mind can be at odds. And you might be aware that you have, a wound around connection or intimacy, but this is the how to rewire it. Because despite that awareness, my guess is you're still calling in the same kind of relationship, the same experiences are still happening, or you're still having the same response in your nervous system. Like it feels dangerous even when it's not, because that's where we have to do the actual rewiring work. And that's where a trauma trained practitioner can come in and do what we call bottom up processing. So here's why cognitive behavioral therapy doesn't work past a certain point. And I would argue that it doesn't work, period. But I do think that this isn't about demonizing or giving CBT a bad name. This is just about understanding why it serves a purpose in a specific way. And then beyond that, you're not going to experience change. The reason is because 10% is cognitive that we experience. And if we're only operating at the 10%, there's all this other 90% that's actually running the show. And what I mean is your body, right, is doing things, engaged in behaviors, looped into patterns, and these things continue to play out. So despite knowing better, you're not doing different. I notice how I didn't say you're not doing better, because that has shame, right? As if you should know. But your nervous system's doing its job when you don't detect that it's going into a protective response, right? So that's the bad news about that. Good news, fire, I run out automatically. Bad news, it happens so fast I couldn't catch it if I wanted to. Now it's something that's a perceived threat. So this is the key to actually transforming and rewiring the nervous system. I'm going to say it a different way, to installing new software in your body, to upgrading the programming and giving your system a reboot, to having the external stimuli remain the same, but your inside respond differently. I'm saying it a lot of different ways so that maybe you hear one of them that lands for you. When we start to work at the level of sensation, and I don't mean, oh, it feels good. What does good feel like? Or, oh, it feels bad. What does bad feel like? Where do you feel that? Once we have that thread, we can start there with the rewiring. Now, there are some nervous systems that, like, this is why we don't ever say, like, just get in your body. Well, what if your body was, related to a trauma that happened? It could be a sexual trauma. It could be where a boundary wasn't honored, where a no was not listened to, right? Where a boundary has been breached is where trauma occurs. And trauma is literally a definition of anything that happens too much, too soon, too fast, but also too little, not enough, too slow. Think like childhood neglect or not getting enough like touch for attachment. So some nervous systems, when you say get in the body, the last place it wants to be is connected to the body. So you might have a starting place, which is, Keri, I feel nothing. Or I feel a little of something and then it went away. That's okay. That's my job to worry about, where I need to help you. Either we need to come up with a different access point, right? Still sensation, but maybe a different way we arrive there. I need to maybe titrate. We just feel a little bit of the thing so that you know that we don't have to go feel the big thing, because it could be really scary unconsciously to be like, let's just feel it all. Like, that's not the purpose of somatic work, which I'll get into at the end here. And we want to make sure that as you start to create safety to get back into your body, that we go slowly, because the trauma, if it occurred at any level because of the body, that's the last place you're going to want to be. So guess what? It can be a little bit challenging to connect to any sensation or any feeling at all. And that's normal too. And that's okay. And that's just, okay, great. We feel nothing. What does nothing feel like? Let's feel that. There's so many different ways, as you can see, that we can kind of start to access the sensation. But the core of somatic work is to restore the felt sense experience, to feel something inside. And then, as a result of the rewiring, we start to repair how we relate to things, really, really great things, really, really not so great things. And we create capacity to be with both and the ability to move through them. with agility and aliveness, because that's the measure of success with nervous system work, is your ability to be flexible and experience really great joy, and also be with really tough things without it kind of knocking you out of the game for too long, right? To notice that there's grief and, oh, I'm going to move through that, and to be with elation and feel that. And so it's such a powerful tool. And I honestly wish that I knew about it sooner. The truth is, what got me into it was my son. And I didn't know this until years later after doing, I've been on over 70 podcasts. And one of the worst questions, I think, and one of the questions I hate being asked is like, so what got you into this? It's just such a huge question, right? Because one step led to the next step. And it was just this unfolding where I was collecting tools and experiences. And I didn't know I was looking for this because I didn't know what the fuck somatic work was either. So if you've never heard of it, or you've heard it mentioned, or you don't really understand the value of it, like, yeah, I was right there with you. I didn't know either. But this was arguably the thing I had been looking for my whole life. And I'm on a mission to get it in the hands of female leaders, because I think that it's too great a cost to the world to lose leaders like you that have a unique set of challenges and struggles and stressors that show up when you have really amazing success, actually, and help you manage that and help you move through that faster, right? And then also, because I'm working with like the world's top leaders behind the scenes, I get to watch this work infiltrate through you to your movement, to your mission, the way that you serve, the way that you mother, the way that you love, the way that you support. And that's the thing that I'm the most interested in. I want to make the most impact with the biggest ripple effect through women like you doing amazing things. And I really believe that somatic work is the key to healing generations to come. So my son, he was about 18 months old, and I nannied, if you're like me, I nannied and I babysat for years. I was probably 10 or 11 when I started to become like a mother's helper. I've always loved kids. I volunteered at summer camps, and I've always loved babysitting and all that. And one of my college jobs actually was 4 kids, age like my first day was the day the fourth one was born. And the oldest, I think, was 5. 4 kids under 5. Woo. It was exhausting, but it was great. They were so sweet. So my son, Peyton, he was 18 months old. And I remember this moment in the master bedroom, in my bedroom. And he was like repeatedly running into one of the walls, which sounds insane. And he's laughing, even though he's like getting a red mark on his head. And I can tell that there's some level of pain. And I'm like, this kid doesn't have an off switch. Like, he seems hyperactive. That's probably the best word I would use to describe him. And so I got really curious. And I was living in a life that's so vastly different than right now. And that's probably another story for another day. But the point is, I didn't know any of this work existed. I didn't even know personal development existed. I didn't know you could rewire your thoughts and retrain your brain and all that, let alone anything under the hood with somatic work, which is like the biggest transformational key. And I took him to the pediatrician. I'm really grateful for this pediatrician who took a very holistic approach. And I said, listen, I don't really know much about like ADD or ADHD. Like, is it too young to sort of explore that? But I just, there's something going on here. He's not turning off. He's hyperactive all the time. Like, it's almost like he doesn't feel pain. Like, he put his finger in a flame once, and I was like, what are you doing? And I responded before he responded. And I just thought, this is odd. This is different behavior. And she goes, you might want to take him to an occupational therapist. We have an OT that we work with. Take him there, have him assessed, see what they say. And so we have him assessed, and they're like, yeah, he's definitely showing signs of what's called SPD. And SPD, if you've never heard of it, is called sensory processing disorder. Now, in somatic work, what's important to know is that we don't believe in disorders. It's really just disconnection within the body. So it can be a disconnection between the brain and the body, where we need to restore the felt sense experience, right? Level of sensation back in the body. But I still believe that this was like a huge important piece to understanding how to serve him in a nervous system needs kind of way. And what came after this was like, he'll be 11 next month, is a decade worth of being his advocate in a regular public school system. where there just isn't education around any of this. I didn't know what SPD was. I didn't know that there could be a sensory diet. I didn't know what proprioceptive and vestibular input were, which were two things that his nervous system was seeking. Now, beyond just this idea of, he's seeking proprioceptive, which is like a tight hug. I talked about a containment hold as like an exercise that you can do. But beyond that, there can be rewiring that occurs, right? But this was as far as we went with the OT in this capacity. And they gave us some tools, which were really helpful to like listen to his nervous system because he would go into a dysregulated state, which would look like lack of impulse control, hyperactivity. It would look like him like running into kids. I mean, it would look like almost malicious behavior, but he is not malicious. In fact, when you would tell him like you hurt somebody, he would be so sad. And it was really heartbreaking as his mom to be like, okay, what's going on here? Like, he clearly doesn't want to do this, but it's almost like he can't connect to me. Like, he can't hear me. And then he's got these blinders up and his nervous system is just having a need. So as I went deeper and deeper into this work and became his advocate, I found somatic work through a business partner, through the coaching space, but it totally made sense because I started bringing it into my house and it was a game changer. I started bringing some of those tools into the way that I talk to the teachers, around empowering him through leadership tasks, but also having them learn to listen through the nervous system lens, which is like, listen, he's not trying to not listen. I get it. I get that this feels like oppositional and disrespectful behavior, but I'm going to just say it to you in a different way that might open your eyes. And I've had teachers thank me. Thank you for bringing this conversation to the table. Thank you for saying it in that way. I never considered that. And it's just simply because they don't have the education and the tools around it. So I'm on a mission to get this work into everyone's hands. And that is why somatic work is so insane. I have watched it create, I don't even want to say miracles, but create a language for something I didn't know exists and use it in my house, use it with my son, empower teachers to have a different way that we talk about things, which is like, he's not a bad kid. He has a nervous system need. And that's a different conversation because now we're not talking about a kid that at some point might just decide to be the bad kid because everyone's been telling him that. We have a kid that just needs different ways to empower him in the way that makes him unique and amazing. So somatic work is a game changer. If you're not doing it, this is the thing that will literally not just change your life, but your nervous system and everyone around you who comes in contact with your nervous system. Because going back to what I said around, the cohort of trained professionals that went from 90 to 15, I realized my body is the tool. Like, I need to be healed enough within myself that I get to use this work as the example, but it's a felt sense experience of me too in this work with that other nervous system in front of me. So somatic work is incredible. And it's something not a lot of people know about still, or maybe they think they know about it. So I hope that this episode provided a little bit more education and context as to why I do somatic work, the way we use it, and what it actually is, and then why it's important to do with a trained practitioner because you can't see the things that are under the hood that are running the show. You operate at the 10%, and there's all this available for you to rewire in the direction of the life that you imagine living, truly, with a sense of agility and aliveness. So I'll see you on the next episode. This episode feels complete to me. I hope this was helpful. Share this episode with somebody that you care about, somebody that you think needs to hear about this work. Maybe I have put to bed some myths for you that you didn't know that you had thought or believed. And let's get this work out there into more people's hands. All right. See you next time.